If we look at the population though, COVID has put that population growth on pause. Australia's traditionally been that 1.4 to 1.8% population growth, but last year it dropped to 0.5%. Now again, not because people didn't want to come, but because people couldn't come. The government federally and with the support of the state premiers introduced strict caps on who could come into Australia. Only a few thousand a week were allowed into Australia, all into 2-week isolation, to see if they had COVID, get them healthy before they were allowed to go out into the general populace. That was a key strategy into Australia's success. But a reminder, it was done to buy time for the vaccine, not as an alternative strategy. And that's where it has got confusing. But you can see everywhere did pretty well. And the only one that went backwards was pretty much Victoria. It shrunk significantly from 120,000 usually down to almost nothing. So that state has shrunk down massively in expansion. The reason for that, it had a huge student population of which many went home during COVID. And as a result, that place has got big problems in what we call stops. And they're apartments that are small, tall and overpriced. We've been warning people about those for over 8 years now. But it really came home to roost during COVID because the people that primarily occupied those smaller apartments that are hard to live in were students. And that student population in Melbourne had always been massively strong and refreshed every year, but this year they can't come in. Now we're still probably 3-6 months away from allowing students back in to any grand scale. So it's going to be a long time before that market in Victoria recovers. But everywhere else is still creeping up. Now WA, etc., doing nicely in range to what they usually, but we still had 136,000 more people through COVID. The government had predicted this would drop down to 0.2, but at 0.5 it's still looking pretty good. And I'm hoping that we're not that far away from opening up those quotas, getting more people back, both Australians and migrants, and getting that population back to its more normal levels, which is great for the economy overall. But importantly, the economy has been doing well despite this lowering. The property market has been doing well despite this lowering. So imagine what's going to happen when these levels go back from the 136,000 increase back towards those $300,000, $350,000, $400,000 levels. The surge in economic activity is going to be significant and profound. Okay? To show you the sub look of those though, we have a look at New South Wales, which did grow its population, but you can see there, they had a lot of babies being born. So that's net increase, so births after deaths. But you can see the dark blue line is net interstate migration. A lot of people have sold up in New South Wales and gone to other states. And you can see Queensland being the key benefactor because it's so close and the northern weather and all these sorts of things. And same in Victoria. You see Victoria had good births, but it had negative movement into other states. But you can see the yellow line was net overseas migration. Now Sydney increased its net overseas migration because there was an influx of expatriates came back, and most expatriates come from New South Wales. So it's only natural to see that kick up nicely. But you can see there, Victoria had a net negative impact from overseas migration because that's all the students that went home as the mess was starting to hit the fan. So you can see there, that's an interesting impact. Queensland being the primary benefactor, and then WA had good natural increases, and it had net overseas migration. A lot of expats did come back, but not as many as New South Wales, but a significant amount to strengthen that economy and build it. Everywhere else was pretty much flatlining, but Queensland, good births, an incredible amount of additional people coming up from Sydney and Melbourne. Now, where that's massively important to note is that most of those people are selling their homes. So when they sell in Sydney or Melbourne, they're getting substantial sums of money, far more than is required to buy a better home in Queensland. So you're now seeing that shift of money from those bigger states of Sydney, Melbourne, New South Wales, Victoria, into Queensland, which has always happened traditionally, but is going to be stronger at this point in time than ever before, and probably will have a lasting effect, greater than we've ever experienced.